"Pick anything you want," Rancher said, until his daughters said, "We want that Apache woman as our mom." The sun rose slowly over the rolling hills of the ranch, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Birds chirped happily, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves of the cottonwood trees that lined the edges of the property. The ranch itself was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see, with wide fields where cattle grazed peacefully and barns that smelled of hay and horses. This was the world of Mr. Samuel Harper, a man who had spent most of his life working the land, caring for the animals and keeping the ranch running smoothly. Samuel was a tall man with broad shoulders, tan skin from years under the sun, and hands calloused from endless work. He had been alone for many years since the death of his wife, a kind and gentle woman whom everyone in town still remembered fondly. Life on the ranch was never easy, but Samuel had always managed to keep everything in order. His heart, however, had remained heavy since losing the woman he loved, and no matter how hard he tried, nothing seemed to fill the emptiness in the house. Samuel's daughters, Emily and Clara, were the light of his life. Emily, the elder at 10, was thoughtful and curious, always asking questions about the world around her. Clara, just 8, was lively and adventurous, often running barefoot across the fields, her laughter echoing through the ranch. The girls missed their mother terribly, and no amount of play or work could completely fill the hole her absence left in their hearts. Samuel noticed their sadness, though he rarely spoke of it. He wanted them to be happy, and he tried to distract them with small joys. A new puppy, a fresh batch of cookies, or a day riding horses. Yet, deep down, he knew what they truly longed for was something far greater. Someone to love and guide them as their mother once had. One bright morning, Samuel called the girls into the kitchen. The room smelled of fresh bread and the sunlight poured through the windows, casting warm patterns on the wooden floor. "Girls," he said gently, "I have something to tell you." Emily and Clara paused, their small hands clutching the edges of the table, their eyes wide with curiosity. Samuel smiled softly, a little awkwardly, because he wasn't used to talking about feelings. "You know," he began, "I want you both to be happy. I want you to have something special, anything you want." He paused, looking at their eager faces. "Pick anything you want." The girls blinked in surprise. This was unexpected. Usually, Samuel was serious, focused on chores, the cattle, and keeping the ranch running. To hear him say something like this, something almost playful, made their hearts leap. "Anything?" Emily asked cautiously, as if afraid to dream too big. Samuel nodded, smiling. "Anything," he repeated. Emily and Clara huddled together, whispering excitedly, their small heads bent close, their voices almost a secret song between them. Samuel waited patiently, watching them with a mixture of pride and curiosity. He had no idea what they might choose. Toys? A new horse? A trip to town? He chuckled softly, imagining all the possibilities. Finally, Clara looked up, her eyes shining with certainty. "Papa," she said, her voice sweet and serious, "we want that Apache woman as our mom." Samuel froze. The words hung in the air like a sudden storm. He blinked, certain he had misunderstood. "What did you say?" he asked slowly, trying to keep his voice steady. Emily spoke next, her voice calm and sincere. "We want her to be our mom, Papa. The one from the reservation near the creek. She's kind and strong and she tells stories. And she smiles in a way that makes everyone feel happy. We want her to be our mother." Samuel's heart thudded in his chest. He had known the woman the girls spoke of, though only in passing. Her name was Ayana, and she was an Apache woman who lived with her family on the nearby reservation. People in the town often spoke of her beauty, her courage, and her wisdom, but in whispers, and sometimes not kindly. Samuel had never considered her in the way his daughters were suggesting, and for a moment he felt confusion, uncertainty, and even fear. Could such a thing really happen? Was it even proper? What would the neighbors say? Yet as he looked at his daughters, he saw the truth in their eyes. They were not asking for a toy or a new dress. They were asking for love. They were asking for a mother. And the thought of denying them this, whatever the difficulties, made his heart ache. Samuel swallowed, trying to steady himself. He had always been practical, careful, and wary of change. But now, faced with the pure wishes of his children, he realized he might need to set aside his own fears. "Girls," he said slowly, his voice gentle but thoughtful, "you know this isn't a small thing. People are going to talk, and there are many things we have to think about." He paused, taking a deep breath. "But, you feel this strongly?"
"Yes, Papa," Emily replied firmly.
"We know it's different, but we don't care. We just want her to be our mom." Clara nodded vigorously beside her, her small face earnest and hopeful. Samuel studied them, the love and determination shining in their eyes. It was impossible to resist. Over the next few days, Samuel found himself thinking about Ayana constantly. He remembered seeing her at the edge of the reservation, tending to her small garden, helping children, or gathering herbs. He remembered her laughter, the gentle way she spoke to the elderly, and the care she showed animals. Yes, she was strong, capable, and kind, qualities any man would admire and any child would love. But could she truly become part of his family? The ranch felt quieter than usual without the girls laughing and playing as freely. Samuel began imagining what it would be like if Ayana joined them. The girls learning new stories, new songs, and new ways of seeing the world. He pictured Ayana walking through the fields with them, teaching them about the plants, the sky, and the world around them. A warmth spread in his chest, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Finally, after much thought, Samuel decided to speak to Ayana. He wanted to approach her with respect, with honesty, and with the hope that she might understand the heart of his daughters. It was a delicate matter, and he knew it would take courage, patience, and a willingness to see beyond old boundaries. But Samuel also knew that this could be the beginning of something wonderful, not just for him but for Emily and Clara, the family they longed for, and perhaps the happiness he himself had been missing for so long. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in deep shades of orange and purple, Samuel sat by the porch, thinking. He watched the girls run through the fields, their laughter echoing in the warm evening air. He smiled softly, feeling both nervous and excited. Change was coming, whether he was ready or not. And for the first time in years, he felt a sense of possibility, a chance that love and family could be found again, in the most unexpected way. As night fell and the stars began to twinkle above, Samuel whispered quietly to himself, "If it will make them happy, then I will find a way." The girls, exhausted from their day of play, ran inside, unaware of the careful plans forming in their father's mind. But Samuel knew one thing for certain: their innocent wish might just change all their lives forever. And deep down, he hoped it would. The next morning, the ranch felt different. The sun rose over the hills as usual, painting the fields golden. But in Samuel Harper's heart, there was a quiet restlessness. He had spent the night thinking about his daughter's bold request. Emily and Clara wanted Ayanna, the Apache woman, to become their mother. Samuel still did not know how such a thing could happen, yet he felt a stirring in his chest, a mix of curiosity, hope, and responsibility. He found the girls in the barn giggling as they brushed the horses' manes. Emily's hair fell over her face, and Clara's laughter rang out as a horse snorted and shook its head. Seeing them happy made Samuel smile, but it also reminded him why he needed to act. He walked toward them carefully, not wanting to startle them. "Girls," he said gently, "I need to talk to you about something important." They stopped their play and looked up at him, curious and attentive. Their small hands were covered in horsehair, and their faces were glowing with excitement from the morning air. Samuel took a deep breath. "You've asked for something very unusual, and I want you to understand that things won't be easy." Emily nodded slowly. "We know, Papa, but we want it anyway." Clara added, "We don't care what anyone says. We just want her to be our mom." Samuel studied them, and despite the weight of his doubts and worries, he felt admiration for their courage. He had always wanted to teach them how to be strong, how to speak their minds, and how to make careful decisions. But even he had never seen such determination in their young hearts. "I think," he said finally, "the first step is for me to speak to Ayanna. We must be respectful and honest. We cannot ask her to join us without understanding her feelings, and we must remember that this is her life too." The girl's eyes lit up. "Can we come, Papa?" Emily asked.
Samuel shook his head gently. "No, girls."
"This is something I must do first, but I promise if she is willing, you will meet her soon." With that, Samuel set out toward the Apache reservation. He had never been sighted before, and the closer he got, the more nervous he became. His horse trotted steadily along the dirt path, the sound of hooves blending with the songs of morning birds. The trees grew thicker, and the air felt fresher, carrying the scent of wild flowers and earth. Samuel felt both excitement and fear. He wondered how Ayanna would react. Would she think him foolish for asking? Would she even listen? When he arrived, he saw children playing near small wooden homes, their laughter mixing with the soft breeze. Women were tending gardens, carrying baskets, and speaking in soft, melodic voices that Samuel did not fully understand. Everything felt alive, warm, and welcoming, yet he hesitated, unsure of how to introduce himself. Finally, he spotted Ayanna. She was standing near a small fire, preparing something to cook. The sun shone on her dark hair, and her eyes held a calm strength. She noticed Samuel and smiled politely, nodding in greeting. Samuel's chest tightened. He had not realized how much courage it would take to speak to her. "Good morning," he said carefully. "My name is Samuel Harper. I live nearby, on the ranch beyond the hills." Ayanna nodded again, her gaze steady. "Good morning, Mr. Harper. How may I help you?" Samuel cleared his throat, searching for the right words. I have daughters, 2 young girls, Emily and Clara. They've asked for you, actually." Ayanna raised an eyebrow, curious but calm. "For me? How do you mean?" They wish for someone to be their mother," Samuel said slowly, "and they spoke of you." He paused, unsure if he should continue. "I am not certain if it is proper to ask, but I wanted to speak to you honestly. Would you consider joining our family? To help raise them, to guide them?" Ayana was silent for a long moment, looking at Samuel carefully. Her expression was unreadable, and Samuel felt a wave of doubt. Had he been foolish? Was this request too bold? Finally, Ayana spoke, her voice calm and gentle. "Mr. Harper, I see your daughters are brave and honest, and I can see why they admire me. But their wish, it is not a small matter. It would change many things, for you, for me, for them. Why do you ask this of me?" Samuel took a deep breath. "Because I want them to be happy. I cannot give them what they long for, not fully. But you have a strength, a kindness, and a wisdom that they admire. I want them to feel the love of a mother again. I, I hope you might be willing." Ayana studied him for a long time. Then, slowly, she smiled. "You are honest, Mr. Harper. And your daughters, they are fortunate to have a father who loves them so much. But this is not a decision I can make lightly. I must consider my own life, my family, and what is right for everyone." Samuel nodded. "I understand. I do not ask lightly either. I only ask that you think about it." Over the next few days, Samuel visited often, always respectful and patient. He saw Ayana in her daily life, tending her garden, teaching children to care for animals, gathering herbs, and telling stories by the fire. He watched as she laughed, guided, and cared, and he realized why his daughters had been drawn to her. She was gentle yet strong, wise yet approachable, and she carried a quiet grace that made everyone feel safe. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Emily and Clara waited anxiously. They helped with chores, fed the animals, and ran across the fields, but their thoughts were always with Ayana. They imagined what she would be like as their mother, teaching them new things, telling stories, and caring for them as their own. Each day they grew more certain of their wish, and their excitement was palpable. When Samuel returned home one evening, he called the girls to the porch. "I have spoken to her," he said quietly. "She is considering your request, and she wants to make the right choice. We must be patient." The girls nodded, their eyes bright with hope. Emily whispered, "Do you think she will say yes, Papa?" Samuel smiled softly. "I hope so, my dear. I hope so." Days turned into a week, and finally, Ayana agreed to visit the ranch. She walked through the fields with Samuel, observing the cattle, the barns, and the girls' favorite places to play. Emily and Clara ran ahead, their laughter echoing across the land. When they saw her, they stopped, and for a moment, everything was still. The girls stared wide-eyed, and then they ran forward, hugging her tightly. Ayana hugged them back gently, feeling the warmth of their small bodies and the trust in their embrace. Samuel watched, his heart full. He realized that this moment, this connection, was the beginning of something new, something that could bring joy, love, and hope to all of them. That evening, as the sun set, Samuel sat by the fire with Ayana. They spoke quietly, discussing the girls, the ranch, and what life might be like if she joined their family. It was not an easy conversation. There were concerns, uncertainties, and questions that had no simple answers, but it was honest, respectful, and full of hope. By the time night fell, the stars sparkled above, and Samuel felt a sense of peace he had not known in years. He knew that the journey was just beginning, but the first steps had been taken. Emily and Clara would have the mother they longed for, and he hoped that one day they would all become a family, united by love, respect, and trust. As he watched Ayana leave for the evening, Samuel whispered to himself, "Perhaps this is the beginning of something wonderful. Perhaps at last happiness is within reach." The girls, asleep in their beds, dreamed of the mother they wished for, and Samuel dreamed of a future full of hope, laughter, and love, one that was no longer limited by fear or doubt. When Ayanna first stepped onto the ranch, the morning sunlight fell softly on the fields, casting a golden glow over the tall grass and the grazing cattle. Emily and Clara had been waiting since dawn, excitement written across their small faces. Their hair was tied back neatly and their hands were clasped together as if bracing for a moment they had dreamed of for weeks. As Ayanna approached, her calm, confident presence immediately filled the space. The girls' eyes widened, and then, with a rush of joy, they ran toward her, their little feet kicking up clouds of dust. "Mama!" they shouted in unison, though they had never called her that before. Their voices were full of hope, innocence, and trust. Ayanna knelt down to their level, a gentle smile on her face. "Hello, my little ones," she said softly. "I have heard so much about you." She opened her arms, and the girls hugged her tightly, laughing and squealing with delight. Samuel, standing a few steps away, felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't felt in years. Seeing the girls so happy, so free, was a relief beyond words. After the first greetings, Samuel led Ayanna around the ranch, showing her the barns, the stables, and the wide fields where the cattle grazed. He explained the daily routines, the chores, and the responsibilities that came with running such a large property. Ayanna listened carefully, nodding as she asked questions and offered suggestions. She had a natural ease with animals and children alike, and Samuel could already see how the girls would benefit from her presence. Emily and Clara stayed close, following Ayanna everywhere. They asked her questions and she answered patiently, telling stories of her childhood, the lessons her own mother had taught her, and the ways she had learned to care for the land and animals. The girls were fascinated, listening with wide eyes and eager minds. Each story, each piece of advice seemed to pull them closer to her, as if they had known her their whole lives. At lunch, they all sat under the shade of a large oak tree. Samuel had prepared simple sandwiches and fresh fruit, but Ayanna added her own touch, sharing small herbs and wild plants she had brought with her. She explained their uses and flavors, letting the girls taste new things and learn about nature in a way that felt magical. Emily and Clara giggled as they tried the different flavors, their curiosity and joy shining brightly. "You have a beautiful place here," Ayanna said quietly to Samuel, as if speaking more to herself than to him. "The land is rich, and the animals are well cared for. But what makes this ranch truly special is the love that fills it. Your daughters are very lucky to have you." Samuel felt a lump in his throat. He had spent years thinking of himself as a provider, a man who kept things running, but never as someone who could give the girls everything they needed emotionally. Yet Ayanna had seen something he hadn't. He nodded slowly. "I try my best," he said quietly, "but they miss their mother." More than anything, Ayanna reached out, placing a comforting hand on his arm. "Perhaps together," she said softly, "we can give them a family that is full of love and guidance, one that they will remember always." The girls, sensing the seriousness of the conversation, sat nearby quietly, holding hands and watching the adults. They felt hopeful, though they did not fully understand the complexities of what was happening. For them, it was simply a dream coming true, a chance to have a mother who would love them, teach them, and care for them in ways they had longed for. Over the next few days, Ayanna returned to the ranch regularly. Each visit brought small moments of joy and learning. She taught the girls how to identify herbs, how to feed and groom the horses properly, and even how to ride safely across the fields. Emily and Clara were quick learners, and their excitement was contagious. Samuel observed silently, marveling at the natural bond that seemed to form between Ayanna and his daughters. One afternoon, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, Emily asked Ayanna to tell a story. Ayanna smiled and agreed, sitting on a large rock while the girls sat cross-legged on the grass, their eyes fixed on her. She told a tale of courage and kindness, of a young girl who faced challenges with wisdom and bravery, and who learned that true strength comes from love and compassion. The girls were captivated. They listened intently, their imaginations painting pictures of the story in their minds. When Ayanna finished, they clapped softly, their eyes shining with wonder. "That was amazing," Clara exclaimed. "You tell stories like magic, Mama." Ayanna chuckled, her eyes softening. "Stories carry lessons," she said. "They remind us of who we can be and what we should never forget. And sometimes they bring people closer together." As the days turned into weeks, the bond between Ayanna and the girls deepened. She was patient with their questions, gentle with their fears, and encouraging of their dreams. She taught them how to care for animals with respect, how to understand the land, and how to be kind to everyone they met. The girls began to look forward to her visits more than anything else, and Samuel noticed that the house seemed brighter when she was there. Neighbors and townspeople began to notice Ayanna's presence on the ranch as well. Some whispered cautiously, unsure what to make of the new arrangement, while others watched silently, intrigued by the unlikely friendship forming. Samuel felt a mixture of concern and hope. He knew that change was not always easy, especially in a place where traditions were strong and people were wary of anything different. But he also knew that his daughters were thriving, and that Ayanna brought something to their lives that no one else could. One evening, after a long day of work and play, Samuel, Ayanna, and the girls sat on the porch, watching the sun set behind the hills. The sky was painted in brilliant oranges and purples, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of wildflowers across the fields. Emily rested her head against Ayanna's shoulder, and Clara held her hand. Samuel looked at them, feeling a sense of peace and hope that he had not felt in years. "Papa," Emily whispered, "we are so happy you brought her here." Samuel smiled softly. "I am happy too, my dear," he said, "but the happiness is yours, and I am grateful to see it." Ayan reached out, placing her hand gently over Samuel's. "Your daughters are remarkable," she said, "and you are a good father. We will take care of them together, and they will grow strong, kind, and brave." The girls beamed, feeling the warmth and certainty of family. For the first time in their young lives, they felt complete. They had the love of a father, the guidance of a mother, and the bond of someone who truly understood and cared for them. As the stars began to twinkle above, the ranch seemed to hum with life. The animals were settling in for the night. The wind whispered through the trees, and the soft glow of the house's windows gave a sense of warmth and safety. Samuel realized that despite the challenges and uncertainties, this was the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter filled with hope, learning, and love. Ayanna had become more than a visitor. She had become a teacher, a guide, and a mother figure. The girls had found a source of comfort, inspiration, and joy. And Samuel, for the first time in years, felt that he was not alone in carrying the responsibility of love and family. Together they had begun to form a bond that would grow stronger with each passing day, a bond that would teach them all the meaning of family beyond blood. By the time the night grew deep and quiet, the ranch was peaceful. Samuel and Ayanna stayed on the porch for a while longer, talking softly about the day and the future. Emily and Clara had fallen asleep inside, dreaming of adventures, stories, and a world that was full of love and possibility. Samuel watched the stars, feeling gratitude and hope. He knew that challenges would come, that people might judge or misunderstand, but he also knew that the happiness of his daughters and the bond forming with Ayana was more important than anything else. This was a family in the making, built not only on wishes but on respect, patience, and the courage to embrace something new. As the night air grew cooler, Samuel whispered quietly, "Thank you, Ayana, for being here. For them. And for all of us." Ayana smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "Thank you, Samuel, for trusting me. Together we will make this family strong, and the girls will grow knowing love and guidance that will last their whole lives." And with that, the ranch settled into the quiet of night, carrying with it the promise of a new beginning, one filled with laughter, stories, care, and the love of a family that had chosen each other not by blood, but by heart. As the days passed, life on the ranch began to feel different. Ayana's presence was no longer new or unusual. She had become a part of the rhythm of daily life. Emily and Clara greeted her each morning with excitement, and the animals seemed to sense the change as well, calmer and more curious around her gentle touch. Samuel watched quietly from the sidelines sometimes, feeling both relief and pride. He had never imagined that the happiness of his daughters could return so fully, or that it would come from someone so unexpected. Ayana's influence on the girls was remarkable. She taught them practical skills first: how to feed the animals properly, clean the barns, and recognize the signs of health or illness in livestock. Emily, with her careful mind, quickly absorbed everything and often repeated instructions to Clara, who was eager but sometimes impulsive. Ayana encouraged their differences, praising Emily's thoughtfulness and Clara's enthusiasm in equal measure. Every lesson was mixed with laughter, stories, and gentle guidance, so learning never felt like a chore. One afternoon, Ayana led the girls to a quiet corner of the ranch, a small grove of cottonwood trees near a bubbling creek. She knelt on the soft grass and gestured for the girls to sit. "Today, I want to teach you something very important," she said, her voice calm but firm. "It is about patience and respect, things you cannot learn only from books or work. They come from observing, listening, and caring." The girls nodded, their eyes wide with curiosity. How do we do that?" Clara asked. Ayana smiled. "First, you must learn to watch. See how the trees bend with the wind, how the animals move without making mistakes, how the water flows without stopping. There is a lesson in everything, if you pay attention." She pointed to a small bird hopping along the creek. "Watch it. See how it chooses where to land, how it drinks without spilling, how it sings without fear." The girls watched intently, amazed by how much they noticed when they truly paid attention. Ayana guided them gently, asking questions and prompting them to think about what they observed. Emily noticed how the leaves shimmered in the sunlight and how the water reflected the sky perfectly. Clara laughed as the bird hopped closer, tilting its head curiously. By the end of the lesson, both girls were calmer, more thoughtful, and quietly inspired. Meanwhile, Samuel began to understand that Ayana's role in their lives was far more than practical. It was emotional. She listened when the girls spoke of their fears, their hopes, and their dreams. She encouraged them to speak honestly, to express themselves, and to value kindness above all else. Slowly, Samuel began to see the transformation in Emily and Clara. Their laughter was brighter, their curiosity sharper, and their hearts more open. They were no longer just children longing for their mother. They were learning to be young, confident individuals guided by love. Neighbors and townspeople, however, were slower to understand. Some whispered behind their hands, curious or suspicious about the Apache woman living alongside the Harper family. Samuel noticed the glances, the quiet comments, and the cautious distance from certain families in town. He felt the weight of it, but also the importance of standing firm. He had always been a man of principle, and now those principles mattered more than ever. He wanted his daughters to grow up unafraid, proud of who they were, and surrounded by love rather than judgment. One evening, after a long day of work, Samuel and Ayanna sat together on the porch watching the sun set behind the hills. The girls had gone inside to wash up, their laughter echoing faintly from the kitchen as they prepared for dinner. "Samuel," Ayanna said quietly, "I see the care in your heart. You want to protect them, to guide them, and to give them happiness. But you must also trust yourself and me. We are all learning together." Samuel nodded, his eyes following the fading light across the fields. "It's not always easy," he admitted. "I worry about what people will say, about how this will be received. But I cannot deny the truth. I see the joy in their faces, and it is worth any difficulty." Ayanna reached out, placing her hand gently on his. "Love is never easy, Samuel, but it is always worth it. Your daughters feel it, and they are thriving." That is proof enough. As autumn approached, the ranch was filled with the warm colors of changing leaves, and life continued to grow richer. Ayanna shared more of her culture with the girls, songs, stories, and traditions that Samuel had never known. Emily and Clara listened, fascinated as Ayanna explained the meaning behind each story, the lessons of courage, compassion, and respect for nature. The girls began to understand that family was not just about blood, but about care, trust, and guidance. One day, Emily asked a question that surprised Samuel. "Papa, why did you let her come here? Weren't you afraid?" Samuel thought for a moment, watching Ayanna laugh with Clara as she showed her how to tie knots for horse reins. "I was afraid," he admitted. "But then I saw how much you wanted her, how much you trusted her, and I realized that sometimes love requires courage more than anything else." Emily smiled. "I think Mama is amazing. She makes everything feel happy." Clara ran up to Samuel, holding Ayanna's hand. "Papa, she's perfect. She tells stories, she helps us, and she listens. She's the best." Samuel chuckled, feeling a warmth he had not felt in years. "Yes," he said softly, "she is." But life on the ranch was not without its challenges. One morning, a neighboring rancher came by, glancing cautiously at Ayanna. "I didn't know you were spending time with her," he said carefully, as if testing Samuel's reaction. Samuel straightened. "She is part of our family," he said firmly, "and she is welcome here." The man hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I understand. I suppose it's your choice, but some people might talk." Samuel met his gaze calmly. "Let them talk. My daughters are happy. That is what matters." Word of Ayanna's presence continued to spread, and although some people were slow to accept it, many began to see the change in Emily and Clara. Their laughter, confidence, and curiosity spoke for themselves. Samuel realized that actions often speak louder than words. Love, care, and respect could not be denied. One evening, as winter approached and the first chill of frost touched the fields, Samuel, Ayanna, and the girls gathered around the fireplace. The girls sat close, listening as Ayana told stories of her ancestors, tales of bravery and lessons learned through kindness and patience. Samuel sat back, smiling quietly as he watched the bond grow stronger each day. He realized that Ayana had become more than a guide or teacher. She had become the mother his daughters had wished for. Her presence brought stability, warmth, and wisdom to the ranch. The girls had someone to look up to, someone to learn from, and someone to love. And Samuel, too, found a friend and partner in the journey of raising his daughters. As the fire crackled, Emily leaned against Ayana and whispered, "I'm so glad you're here, Mama." Clara echoed her sentiment, snuggling close. Samuel felt his heart swell with gratitude. The journey had not been easy, and there were still challenges ahead, but for the first time in years, he felt that his family was whole. Ayana looked at him and said softly, "Your daughters are remarkable, Samuel, and you are a good father. Together we can give them a life filled with love, guidance, and joy." Samuel nodded, understanding that this was just the beginning. Life would continue to test them, but they were ready. They had chosen love over fear, trust over doubt, and family over judgment. And that, he knew, would carry them through any obstacle. As the night deepened, the ranch settled into calm. The wind whispered through the trees, and the animals rested peacefully. Emily and Clara slept soundly, dreaming of adventures, stories, and the love of a family united not just by blood but by heart. Samuel and Ayana watched over them, feeling a quiet joy that had been missing from their lives for too long. In that moment, the ranch was more than a home. It was a place of hope, growth, and love. And Samuel knew that, with patience, courage, and guidance, they would continue to thrive together, facing the world as a family bound by trust, respect, and the gentle strength of a mother's love. Winter had settled gently over the ranch. The hills were covered with a light dusting of snow, and the trees stood bare but strong against the cold wind. Smoke curled from the chimneys of the farmhouse, and the smell of fresh bread and warm stew drifted across the fields. Samuel Harper watched from the porch, the crisp air filling his lungs, and felt a sense of peace he had not known in years. This winter was different. It was filled with warmth, laughter, and love, a love that had slowly grown, patient and strong, between his daughters and Ayana. Emily and Clara had changed remarkably over the past months. They woke with excitement each morning, eager to see Ayana and learn something new. Emily, thoughtful and observant, had become skilled at the chores, helping Samuel feed the animals and manage the barns. Wow, Clara, energetic and adventurous, had grown confident in her riding and learned to work alongside her sister and Ayana, mastering tasks that once felt difficult. Both girls had blossomed under Ayana's guidance, their laughter echoing across the ranch as if the emptiness of the past had been replaced with joy. Ayana herself had become indispensable. She had not only taught the girls about the land, the animals, and practical skills, but also about patience, kindness, and resilience. She shared stories from her own childhood, tales of her ancestors, and lessons about courage, honesty, and compassion. The girls hung on every word, absorbing knowledge that went beyond books or lessons. They learned that strength was not only in physical skill, but also in understanding, caring, and standing firm in what was right. One morning, as the sun rose softly over the snowy hills, Samuel noticed the girls playing near the creek with Ayana. The frost glittered on the grass, sparkling like tiny diamonds, and the sound of running water mixed with the girls' laughter. Emily was teaching Clara how to build small dams with stones, while Ayana watched, offering gentle advice and encouragement. Samuel felt a swell of pride and gratitude. He realized that this joy, this sense of family, was what he had always longed for. Later that day, Samuel gathered the courage to take a walk with Ayanna across the fields. The snow crunched beneath their boots and their breath formed clouds in the cold air. Samuel had been thinking about the future, about how life would unfold for their unusual but happy family. "Ayanna," he began carefully, "I want to thank you. You've brought so much to this place, to my daughters, to me. I cannot imagine life without you now." Ayanna smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the pale winter sun. "It has been a journey," she said. "We all had to learn to adjust and to trust each other. But your daughters, they are remarkable, Samuel. And you are a good father. You love them deeply, and that makes all the difference."
Samuel nodded, his eyes meeting hers.
"I was afraid at first, afraid of what people would think, of whether this was the right choice. But seeing the girls, seeing how happy they are, I know we made the right decision." Ayanna reached out, taking his hand gently. "Love is always worth the risk. You've shown courage, Samuel, and your daughters feel it. We've built something here that will last a lifetime." As the day went on, neighbors and townspeople began to notice the change on the Harper ranch. Some were curious, some skeptical, but many were struck by the harmony and happiness they saw. Children played together across the snow-covered fields, and the adults spoke quietly of the respect and care that seemed to fill the air. Slowly, judgment and suspicion began to fade in the face of undeniable love and family unity. One evening, the family gathered around the fireplace. The fire's warm glow illuminated the room, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Emily and Clara sat close to Ayanna, listening intently as she told a story about bravery, patience, and the importance of kindness. Samuel watched from his chair, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. He realized that the girls had not only found a mother, but also a guide, a teacher, and a friend who would stay by their side through every season of life. After the story, Emily leaned against Ayanna's shoulder. "Mama," she whispered, "we love you so much. Thank you for being here." Clara nodded vigorously, wrapping her small arms around Ayanna's waist. "Yes, you are the best mama in the world." Ayanna smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "And I love you both very much. You have brought joy to my life too. Together, we are a family." Samuel felt a lump in his throat. The house was filled with warmth, laughter, and love, more than he had ever dreamed possible after the loss of his wife. He realized that family was not only about who was born into it, but also about who chose to love, nurture, and guide each other. In that moment, he knew that this family, his daughters, Ayanna, and himself, was whole. Winter deepened, and the ranch grew quieter under blankets of snow. The girls spent their days learning from Ayanna, helping Samuel, and exploring the fields and woods. They built snow forts, tended to the animals, and practiced riding across frozen streams. Each day brought laughter, lessons, and new experiences, strengthening the bond between them. Samuel noticed that the girls' confidence and joy had grown beyond measure. They were no longer the small, uncertain children who had wished for a mother. They were strong, happy, and loved. Ayanna also became a companion to Samuel, helping him with the ranch work, sharing meals and offering advice when needed. Their respect and trust for each other grew quietly but steadily. Samuel realized that love had returned to his life in a form he had not expected, not only through Ayanna's care for the girls, but through her wisdom, companionship, and presence. Together, they managed the ranch, guided the girls, and faced the small challenges of daily life with patience and teamwork. One evening, after a particularly long day of chores and lessons, Samuel and Ayana stood outside, looking up at the stars that shimmered above the snow-covered hills. The sky was clear and cold, and the world felt peaceful and infinite. "Ayana," Samuel said softly, "do you ever think about how far we've come?" Ayana smiled, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "Every day, Samuel. We've built something remarkable. Your daughters are happy, loved, and learning important lessons. And we have found a family together." Samuel nodded, feeling a sense of completion he had not known since before his wife passed. "I never thought this could happen. I never imagined that love could return to our lives in such a way." Ayana took his hand, holding it gently. "Life has a way of surprising us. Courage, patience, and love. They bring people together when it matters most. And now, we are all stronger because of it." The next morning, the ranch awoke to a bright winter sun. The girls were already outside, playing in the snow, their laughter carrying across the fields. Samuel watched them from the porch, his heart full. Ayana helped them build snowmen, guided them across the frozen creek, and taught them the joy of observing nature even in winter. The animals, too, seemed to sense the happiness and calm that had settled over the ranch, moving contentedly in the fields. By mid-morning, the entire family gathered for a simple breakfast in the farmhouse. The fire crackled warmly in the hearth, and the smell of fresh bread and stew filled the room. Samuel looked around at the girls and Ayana, feeling a quiet gratitude that he could hardly put into words. For so long he had feared life would remain lonely and quiet, but now his home was alive with love, laughter, and hope. Emily, her cheeks flushed from the cold, leaned toward Ayana. "Mama," she said softly, "thank you for teaching us everything, and for loving us." Clara nodded, her eyes sparkling. "Yes, we are so happy you're here. We love you." Ayana smiled warmly, hugging them both close. "And I love you, always. We are a family now, together, no matter what comes." Samuel felt tears well in his eyes. He realized that this was what he had been waiting for all along. A family united, not just by blood, but by choice, love, and trust. The girls had found their mother, and he had found a partner in guiding them through life. Together they had built a home filled with joy, respect, and warmth, a home where everyone mattered and everyone belonged.